Hello, I'm Jeff Cavins, and today we are looking at the scriptures for the 23rd week in Ordinary Time. This week is one of those texts that we have a little bit of a problem with, and we don't know exactly how to take it because it appears that Jesus in Luke chapter 14 is telling us as part of our faith that we need to hate mom and dad. Now that doesn't jive with us right away. Immediately we think, well, that couldn't possibly be true. And you're right, it's not. It's hyperbole. And Jesus is making a point. He says literally that if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Well, that puts a lot of us out right at that point. So what does he really mean? What is he really saying to us? Well, he's telling us that if we're going to be his disciple, if we're going to follow him, and we're going to share his worldview, and we're going to do his works, we need to be really, really committed. And there really is no such thing as a lukewarm disciple. You're either hot or you're cold. And Jesus is telling us that if you're going to follow him, you need to count the cost. In fact, he goes on and he says right away after he says you need to hate mom and dad if you're going to be my disciple, he says, for which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? And then he goes on and he says, otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. And then he goes on, he gives another illustration, and he says, or what king going to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and take counsel whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000. So he says we need to hate mom and dad, okay? And then he goes on and says, you need to count the cost. You need to vet a project. You need to look into whether you have what it takes or you're willing to do what it takes to get the job done. And if you're going to be a disciple of Jesus, he's saying it's all in. It's all in. You need to give up everything. And to illustrate that, he says, you even need to hate mom, dad, brother, sister, others. Now, you know he's not saying you need to go home now and say, I'm a disciple of Jesus, I hate you. That's not what he's saying. But he is saying that you need to be completely given over to Jesus. You need to literally choose God above all else. You see, to be an effective disciple of Jesus means that you have to give up everything else. It's all in. It's kind of like the military. When we send people overseas, they are trained. They have a way of thinking. They are well prepared because when they're on the battlefield, it's all or nothing. They're completely focused. And that's the way it is with us. And in fact, what is really interesting is that if you really want to love mom and dad, if you really want to love your wife, your husband, your brother, your sister, you need to be totally committed to Jesus. And the way that you actually love your mom and the way you actually love your dad is by putting Jesus first. I'm reminded of one other time in the Gospel of John where he said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. It's a matter of priority. Seek first Jesus. And that means that when you wake up in the morning, you go out in your day, you're working, you're with family and so forth. It means that there's one priority. And if that priority is set and established and you are faithful to that priority of serving Jesus completely, all of your other relationships will fall in line. They'll all be fruitful. But if you put people above Jesus and you put things above Jesus, then everything will be out of whack. So decision-making, your time, your money, your relationships, everything falls in line with a life that is totally committed to Jesus. So I want to encourage you this week to think about being a disciple and what that means. And are you all in or are you partially in? If you are partially in, then I really encourage you to go to confession and to say, Lord, I put things before you, and I want to be that successful husband, wife, friend, employer, employee. I want to put you first so that everything flows from this relationship. So don't leave this recording saying, well, I'm going to go out there and hate mom and dad. No, but in comparison to loving Jesus, That's what he's talking about. God bless you and have a great week.